Hi guys, it's Kelly here, and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring this wonderful collaboration set between Hero Arts and Ink Blot Shop, and it is called Please Deliver 2. It's been out for a little while now. I actually made this card quite some time ago, but then they were all sold out, so I didn't want to present you with beautiful craft products that you then, could not get if you wanted to get. So this is actually, even though the set was sent to me by Tiffany from Ink Blot Shop, it's actually available for purchase on Hero Arts website. So, hold on, I'm looking for the other set I used because I can't remember the name of it, which is also by Ink Blot Shop. Give me a second. Alright, Bubble Words. My bad. And I love that set, but I couldn't remember the name. So first things first, before we talk about the card, do you hear this audio? Do you hear this audio? This clear, loud audio? Do you hear it? It's like oh my gosh, it's like angels singing. It's like when Ariel comes up out of the water onto the rock and she's singing with her beautiful voice. Like that's my moment right now. I'm a Ariel right now, but I can't sing, so I'm not going to do it. But anyway, I'm so excited that the audio is fixed. Hallelujah. Praise Jesus. Thank you, Lord. Okay. So, back to the card. This set is kind of like a hybrid set. Like, it's got some borders in there, which are really beautiful for card making, but then it also has a couple of other things to like decorate envelopes. So you could use the borders for envelope decoration, or you could use them to make cards. I'm going to kind of do both. I really loved like all the craft items. This is so totally my style. Tiffany from Ink Blot Shop has another set where these items are, I think it's like called Art Desk or something like that. I'll have to link it below so you can check it out. And I did another video with that, like I did a craft desk, and I love that set too. Kind of in the same vein. But anyway, one layer cards. That's what I'm doing today. So here I went ahead and stamped my border. And then I masked it because I knew I wanted to do some inking in the background. And then I was just going to move it down to continue my stamping. There's these cute little envelopes that are included in the set, and one of them has like a card with hearts poking out, and one is sealed with a heart in that like Hero Arts envelope style, like the little, what do you even call it? It's like a little scripty edge. Like a little scallop edge, and that's how their envelopes look, and it's like, so this matches perfectly. I love this set. Anyway, so I wanted to just kind of bulk up that bottom border, and I'm going to create masks for that too, so that when I do my ink blending in the background, everything is good and covered up. So I left the border in place up there because I was like, I'll just leave it here and then I'll be able to just put my envelope right in there and it will fit perfectly. Except for I did not allot for the fact that the envelope is slightly larger than a card, so one will fit inside the other. And so because of that, I did end up having to move my stamp because I couldn't get it lined up where it needed to go on the edge. That was my bad. I didn't think about it like that, but no big deal. All that ink was pretty much dry anyway on the stamp, so I didn't even bother cleaning it. I just moved it, re-inked it, stamped it down. Yeah, so this is totally going to be a one-layer card. Lots of Copic coloring. There isn't really anything like new or fancy that like I haven't done before. Just like a good, solid Kelly card. That's what you're getting today, guys. Just a good, solid Kelly card. So once I had the border stamped on the back there, this is crooked. This is crooked AF. The center label is crooked and I didn't catch it until after the fact, but I am going to stamp these down. This is the like return address section and then the, who you're sending it to. I think that the little notebook papers are totally adorable. And because like me, when I write something, I really can never write in a straight line. Probably because I turn my paper. It's also how I color. So something like this is like just a super cute little detail to put on my envelope if I had stamped it straight, but I didn't. So here I'm putting all those masks in place, and this is on the envelope, actually. Did I start with the envelope? No, this is the card. This is the card. I don't know what's happening. Do you know what's happening? Because I don't. And then I'm going to use Salty Ocean and Peacock Feathers Distress Ink And I'm just kind of going to blend this up into a white gradient. You guys know how I do. I like a clean and simple card, but I do like my background to be somewhat interesting, so I often will fade them off into white. You could certainly do this with any other ink that you own or Distress Oxides, but I like the bolder colors of inks, so that's what I decided to use. I'm really going to be adding minimal peacock feathers, just enough, so that it looks like it's blending from one color to another, coming up from behind this little border, and then blending out into that white. The other thing that I'm going to do, and like you want to, I guess, make sure that when you're doing it, I'm going to peel off the mask here, because I'm going to reuse this to create the same look on my envelope, just so that way they're all kind of like matchy. I'm not going to add any other color on my envelope because the envelopes I have are relatively thin, and doing any sort of Copic coloring on them without putting like an insert in would just bleed through the front. So I'm just going to reuse this, put that right back down. If you, this is Eclipse masking paper, which I love and have never really had any issues with, even if I'm going to reuse it like I am here. I put it down once and then, reused it a second time. You can definitely trim these out and then keep them with your sets so you have them in the future. I don't always do that because sometimes if I'm doing really heavy ink blending, I don't, like, it doesn't dry properly on there, I guess. So like the ink will stay wet because it's a non-porous surface. But if it's just like one or two times of using Distress ink, I haven't really had any issues. So now that that's done, I'm going to remove that mask, and this is pretty much done. I'm not going to add anything else to it. Before I get into the coloring, I'm also going to stamp my sentiment. I love these big bubble letters. I think they're so fun. I used them before in like a graffiti type style card, but they're really good for all kinds of cards. So I wanted this to say sending big hugs. That's what I'm gonna put on there, and I just stamped it in black. This is me kind of lining up the top of the sentiment, and because there really isn't any area, like any photopolymer on the left or the right of the stamps, don't mind my head here, I can just put them in there together and stamp them at the same time. All the ink I used up until this point has been Copic safe. I do prefer a regular dye ink, that just because it's a bit bolder when I'm stamping sentiments, so I switched over to the Hero Arts regular black dye ink instead of the intense black. And then here I'm going to stamp the Please Deliver To on that little notebook paper section, which is really where I first kind of started to dope out that it was crooked, because I had to put the stamp on there a certain way so it would fit in the spot. Know what I'm saying? And then now once that is all done, here's these two side by side. You can see they're, roughly the same color. And then that very, very crooked, I know it shouldn't bother me, but it does, very, very crooked envelope. And so here I started coloring. I just must have been in such a state this day. I'm not really sure why. Maybe I was rushing trying to get to work. Lately I have been trying to squeeze some card making in between the time that I leave for work and the time that Peanut's dad picks him up. So I might have just been rushing, but I forgot to zoom in. Don't worry, it won't be like this the whole time. I will eventually dope out that you are not close enough to see what is happening. I did a lot of gray shading, so mostly it's just things I wanted to be white that I wanted to add some shadows into so that it would have that depth. I might have got a little heavy-handed, I'm not gonna lie. I can acknowledge my shortcomings. I did probably get a little heavy-handed with the gray. Sometimes that happens. I still think that they do read as white, but they're just more shadowed, I think, than I probably would have preferred. But I'm doing this first because it is a lighter of the colors. So sometimes if you color, let's say, like red, and then you try to go over it, or color an area next to it that has the gray, the red can bleed where you're adding more moisture into the card. So I try to do this first if I remember. So that's it. Pretty much just going to kick back, do all kinds of coloring. I will comment on the card as we go. You know how that rolls. As far as story time, has there really even been anything happening to me? Probably not. So I did take my first couple of days off of work from my new job. I took 2 days off, which actually gave me a full 6 days off. Thank you, 12-hour shifts. Which was a very, very nice to have a little bit of time off and time to spend with Eric. Peanut was actually camping with his dad, so it was just me and him hanging out. He had some off days, I had some off days. And so that was wonderful. I went back to work the end of last week. So I went back to work this past Saturday. And honestly, the 12-hour shifts, I've never worked at a place that had 12-hour shifts. I've always been like a 40-hour work week, 8 hours, 5 days a week. I am really rather enjoying it. It is super kind of nice on the short weeks where you only work 2 days. That's so nice. See, now here we've zoomed in. You're welcome. And then even my long weeks where I work 3 on, 2 off, and then 2 on, doesn't seem super long, probably because I was used to working 5 days a week. And amongst those 5 days, like at one point I was carrying 4 jobs. I was working full-time at the police station clerking. I was working part-time at another police station dispatching. I was working part-time teaching college, and then I was working part-time card making. So I think that this just feels like such an easier schedule, like that it's not crazy. I wouldn't be teaching now regardless, even if I hadn't decided to walk away from that. Just because it's, summer and Corona. And they've pretty much switched to virtual learning most places, if possible. And then I will probably pick up another part-time job. Like, I'll go back to my original police department part-time when they start hiring part-timers back. But right now, because of Corona, they laid off all the part-timers. None of these cities have any money. Like, God bless them. Because they pushed the taxes back, most city depends on that revenue for like what they budget for the year, and because they're getting it 3 months late, which I totally understand, but that means a lot of people who are non-union employees have been laid off in public service, and obviously there's a ton of people who were deemed quote-unquote non-essential. I don't really like saying that. It sounds totally, I don't know, like they're less than, which is completely not true. But who, weren't working as well. So economy's kind of hurting right now. But once they do hire part-timers back, I will for sure be going back to help out and to be with my people. Speaking of Corona, so I guess that is something that did happen to us. So when you call, whether it's 911 or the non-emergency number, one of the things that we are doing now is asking COVID questions, because we're going to send officers or paramedics or firemen into your space, and they need to be able to take proper precautions if somebody in your household tested positive or has been exposed. And so there's a bunch of questions we have to ask. Now, I ask them with almost every call. If it's a call where an officer can call them on the phone, we're not asking. But if it's like something where an officer or we're sending some sort of unit out to you, whether it's police, fire, or EMS, we're asking the questions. So, have you or anyone you know been in contact or been asked by your doctor to quarantine? That's the first question. Then, after that, it's difficult or labored breathing, upper respiratory infection, high fever, chills, cough, weakness, or body aches. And then if they answer any of those with yes, then the follow-up question you ask is if they've had diarrhea. That's not a symptom just by itself, but if it's coupled with any of those other things. And then from there, the dispatcher will be able to tell whoever's responding that they need to gear up with PPE, whether it's just their regular mask and gloves, they're wearing that for all the calls, but, responding out with full, suits and gear and all of that. So it changes their response. Well, you guys know, if you watch my channel for some time, Eric is also a first responder. And so he got sent on a call that was really more of a, it wasn't like a crime occurring, but this young lady was having a hard time, and she was breaking items in the house and kind of having an episode, and her family needed assistance with helping to calm her down. And so they went out for this call. Well, they went out for the call, and she had locked herself in the bathroom, and so they were trying to figure out other avenues of whether or not they could get in the bathroom, and there was another bedroom door that was shut, and one of the guys said, you know, what's in there? Is there access in there, or what have you? And they were like, no, that's, you know, so-and-so who moved in after she tested positive. Well, okay then. So all of the guys thankfully had on, you know, their gloves and masks, but the N95s are gone. Like anybody who, I don't know any police department that still has enough N95 masks to issue to their police officers. They're just not a thing. So they're basically wearing, you know, like the surgical masks. And they were only in there for, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes. But regardless, now we have an exposure. And so we had to make decisions accordingly. So that night, Peanut was home with me. He was working, I was off. And so he called me and let me know. We talked about a bunch of different options. First and foremost, I called Nathan's dad, and I was like, I think I should bring him to you because Eric hasn't been home yet. He hasn't been exposed. And so that's what I did. It was like 10 o'clock at night, driving him over to his dad's house. And then Eric and I talked about what our options were household wise. They are offering discounts at hotels for first responders, but even with the discounts, to put somebody up in a hotel for 2 weeks, even at the discounted rate, was over $700, which is just not feasible for most people, and it is not for us. So we decided that he would come home. Thankfully, we are blessed enough that we have 2 full bathrooms and a guest bedroom, and so we made the decision that Eric would stay in the guest bedroom and use that bathroom exclusively, so that it was kind of contained, and then we would try to get him tested as soon as we could, but in the meantime, you know, we'd have to ride out this 2 weeks. So after I dropped off Peanut, I came home. I took everything out of that bedroom that wasn't necessary, because I figured the less stuff in there, the less stuff we would have to sanitize if you were to get sick. So cleaned out everything except for like the nightstand and the dresser and the bed, obviously. I took out all of the extra pillows, just anything that wasn't nailed down and wasn't necessary for him to live for the next 2 weeks came out of that room. Then I started gathering up all of his items. So his clothes, toothbrush, deodorant, contacts, you know, and all I kept thinking like the whole time was like, I'm going to miss something. There's going to be something that he uses every day that I don't even think about. And like, we're just going to have to make do, but I'm going to try to do the best that I can to get him his things over there. So actually I think I didn't do too bad. I think I missed lotion, and there was something else, I think. I don't remember what it was. But so got that, like towels, everything stocked in the bathroom. Cleaned out anything in the bathroom, again, that wasn't nailed down and necessary, just to limit the amount of sanitizing we would have to do if it did ended up, you know, being that he was positive for it. So did all of that. He came home. He had already like sanitized and all of that stuff as best as they could at work and changed clothes. So his uniform was in a bag, all of that stuff. So that went, thankfully, when you walk into our house from the garage, our washing machine, washer and dryer is right there. So he could just kind of like dump it in there, wash it on the hottest setting, all that jazz. And then he came up to take a shower, and then he was sitting in the bed and I was sitting in the hallway, you know, so we could talk to one another, trying to figure out what our best options were. Eventually we got to the point where he had like, he was nervous about it, and I told him I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay. That he could come downstairs and have like one section of the family room that he sat in, and then if he needed something to eat or drink or whatever, I would get it. We would put it in like a neutral area and he could walk over and pick it up after I obviously had exited the area to limit, any exposure to myself. So, yeah, I do not envy people in the healthcare field who have been living like this since the start of this, having to stay away from their family, not being able to hug or kiss their children or their loved ones. I cannot even imagine how tremendously difficult that must be, because I have not been able to see Peanut since I took him to his dad's. Like, we FaceTime and stuff like that. I had talked about maybe going to pick him up and take him to the park. Like, I couldn't bring him back to the house. But after talking to his grandparents, who are the ones who are watching him because we cannot, he can't be home with us. They weren't comfortable with it, which I totally understand, and I appreciate their help in this situation. So, just FaceTime and phone calls pretty much is what I got going on right now. And it's only been a week. It's only been a week of this. So, in looking at the testing, we thought that maybe we would be able to get him in because there was so much paperwork and like memos and stuff like that came out to first responders when this whole thing, first happened, because it's just completely unprecedented times. I don't have to tell you guys that, you're living it too. And so there was like this on-call doctor if there was an exposure. Well, apparently they're not testing anybody who's been exposed unless they show symptoms. So even though he is a first responder who now has been exposed, and he was not exposed, let me be clear there, like he was not exposed to the person who had tested positive, but she lives in that household and has free reign of the house, and he was talking to and working with the family, who obviously we know now there are asymptomatic carriers and all that. So we thought anyway we would be able to get him tested for a little bit quicker as a first responder. Turns out that's not true. Unless you're showing symptoms, they aren't doing that testing. That testing's not available. And because most governments are terrified that these employees are going to start claiming that it's an on-duty injury, they have to do it on their own time and they have to pay for it themselves. So, which is sometimes a little bit disheartening, because it's like you want them to continue to come to work because they are necessary, but you want them to do if they get it from coming to work, which you need them to do, then they're on their own. So it's just, that is kind of a little bit much. And even like Nathan's dad, who works at a retail store, like they've given them 2 weeks extra sick time. Not even if they were exposed or test positive, just period. They gave them 2 weeks extra sick time. Then if they had an underlying health condition, they got another 2 weeks, as like a kind of a thank you for coming to work, which they totally deserve, by the way. But anywho, so Eric looked at, I think it's CVS was doing the testing. So now Ohio, you can go and get tested without the symptoms. You just have to make the appointment and go. And they're doing it in the drive-thru, and you do the test yourself. So he had looked at it, and I guess they were only booking out 3 days in advance, and they were filling up super quickly. So they told us that he should not get tested until 3 or 4 days after the exposure, to make sure that if he did have it, there would be enough built up antibodies for it to register on the test. So he did just go get his test done Thursday morning. And so now we're just waiting for the results. So, if you guys could keep us in your prayers that everything comes back good. So far, he's been taking his temperature and all that. We haven't had any symptoms, thank God. So we're just sitting, waiting for the results and hoping that they're positive. And that's what our household's been like. Hope you guys are doing slightly better than that. So now all the coloring is done. I'm just adding in some white highlights along the drawings, and then of course I'm going to outline everything because that's how I roll. I know it seems extreme, especially with something like this where there's all these different images, but it doesn't bother me any to outline it, and I like the look of it better enough to spend the time doing it. But certainly not something that is you need to do. This is really just my own personal preference. And I realize that some people don't have the motor skills to be able to do that. If that's a camp that you fall into, no worries. It's still very pretty. So this is the card. I'm going to add some glitter. You guys know how I love me some glitter, especially on my art supplies. Honestly, where else would you have glitter? I mean, I have it everywhere, let's be honest. But I mean, definitely in the craft room, for sure. So then that's the whole card, and then this little matching envelope so that when I send them, they will go forward and make my recipients super happy, or at least I hope. So I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.